We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Hayam and Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 75b. The Gemara says that Rebbe Elazar holds like Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yishmael savar like Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yishmael holds like Rabbi Akiva, and that will explain again why Rebbe Elazar holds that a kusi is not allowed to marry a kusis. Rashi here explains, Rebbe Elazar da'amar kusi lo yisa kusis. Rebbe Elazar, who says that a kusi is not allowed to marry a kusis, savar like Rabbi Yishmael v'chul. Again, he holds like Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Yishmael holds like Rabbi Akiva. Lo isparesh heicha itmar. Now we don't know where exactly this was stated. Lo b'mishnah v'lo b'braisa. We don't know it from a mishnah. We don't know it from a braisa. Ela mishmaita de Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. We only know it from the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Di amri lekamon sholosh machlokas b'davar. They tell us that there's a three-way machlokas in this regard. In any case, the Gemara now explains what it is referring to. Rebbe Elazar savar like Rabbi Yishmael. Number one, Rebbe Elazar holds like Rabbi Yishmael, the Amar Kusim Geirei Arayos Heim. Rabbi Yishmael holds that the Kusim are considered like Geirei Arayos, meaning to say that they converted, this is a story in the Navi, they converted because of the fear of the lions. This is a situation of the non-Jews. They were placed in the area of the Shomron, in the area of Samaria, the Samaritans, and so they converted because they were being attacked by lions. And as Rashi explains, Geirei Arayos, and according to Rabbi Yishmael, that they're Geirei Arayos, they're like any other non-Jewish people, non-Jewish men that marry Jewish women. That's what Rabbi Yishmael understands. Rabbi Yishmael savar like Rabbi Akiva, and furthermore, Rabbi Yishmael holds like Rabbi Akiva, damar ovid kochavim v'eved habal bas Yisrael, that if you have an ovid kochavim or you have an eved that has relations with a bas Yisrael, with a Jewish girl, havlad mamzer, so then the child is considered to be a mamzer. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Yishmael savar like Rabbi Akiva, tahachayve lavinhein. The point over here is, if you have ovid kochavim eved with a bas Yisrael, that's only at the level of a negative commandment, that's chayve lavin, but Rabbi Akiva holds that the child's a mamzer by chayve lavin. Therefore, that's why Rebbe Elazar says what he says. Therefore, kusi lo yisa kusis. A kusi is not allowed to marry a kusis. The tarvayu sveike mamzerim him, because both of them is a doubt they might be mamzer. The yesh lomer b'chalechon mehem, because by every single one of them you could say hu ba mi Yisraelis hanisas laovid kochavim. Maybe this child came from a Jewish woman that married a non-Jew. Varehu mamzer, and he's a mamzer. V'zuba mikusi v'kusis meolam, and this one came from a kusi and a kusis. Inam yivchor, maybe it was the reverse, and so therefore you have a situation where it could be one of them is a mamzer and one of them is not a mamzer. That is the point, and that's why Rebbe Elazar says a kusi is not allowed to marry a kusis. But the Gemara continues, Umi savar la Rabbi Yishmael ka Rabbi Akiva. But does Rabbi Yishmael really agree with Rabbi Akiva that by chayve lavin there's a situation of mamzer? V'yamar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Yishmael. But Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, Minayin lo v'kochavim v'yevet shaba la kohenes v'al levia v'al bas Yisrael. How do you know that if a non-Jew or an eved have relations with a kohenes or a levia or a Jewish woman, shepaslua, that they disqualify her from the kahuna? We know that shenemar, because the pasuk says uvas kohen kisi almano grusha v'zera ein lo. It talks about the daughter of a kohen. Let's say she gets married, and so at the time that she gets married, she leaves the kahuna, so to speak, but then she becomes a widow or she gets divorced and she doesn't have any children. So it says v'shavel beisavi. It says she returns to her father's house. She returns to the ability to act as the daughter of a kohen, to be able to get truma, etc. And we understand that to mean mishiyesh lo almanus v'gerishin. That's true if she was married to someone where there's a concept of widowhood, where there's a concept of getting divorced, meaning she was married to a Jewish person. It's a real marriage. Yatsa over kochavim v'eved, that comes to exclude a non-Jew, or let's say an eved she'ein lo almanus v'gerishin. There's no concept of widowhood. There's no concept of getting divorced because it's not a marriage in the first place. In that situation, she would be disqualified. She would not return to the house of her father. And the point over here is that Rabbi Shmuel is learning that she's disqualified from this pasuk. And so the Gemara now says, V'sal kadaitach savar like Rabbi Akiva. Now, if you think that Rabbi Shmuel holds like Rabbi Akiva, that in such a situation of an eved or an ovid kochavim, the child's a mamzer, so hashta mamzer have it. If you're now going to say that the child's already a mamzer, mifsal b'biyasam iboy, would we even need a pasuk to teach us that she's disqualified through the act of relations? Of course she is disqualified. So it's clear from the fact that Rabbi Shmuel needs a pasuk to teach us that she's disqualified from the kahuna, meaning if you have a situation of an ovid kochavim or an eved that has relations with this bas Yisrael, you need a pasuk to say that she's disqualified from the kahuna, so therefore it's clear that the child is not a mamzer, and Rabbi Shmuel does not hold like Rabbi Akiva. And so the Gemara instead says, Ela Rebbe Elazar savar like Rabbi Shmuel. Rather, what we mean to say is as follows. themselves. Rebbe Lozer holds like Rabbi Yishmael. Diamar kusim gerei arayos. That Rabbi Yishmael says kusim are gerei arayos. And then Rebbe Lozer, not Rabbi Yishmael, but Rebbe Lozer v'savar like Rabbi Akiva. Rebbe Lozer also holds like Rabbi Akiva. Diamar ovid kochavim v'yevet habal bas Yisrael havlad mamzer. Again, Rabbi Akiva says an ovid kochavim or an eved that has relations with the bas Yisrael, the child is a mamzer. But the Gemara says to that, Rebbe Lozer Rabbi Akiva. Does Rebbe Lozer really agree with Rabbi Akiva? V'yam Rebbe Lozer, but didn't Rebbe Lozer say, Afal pi shenechliku beis Shammai or beis Hillel b'tzaros, even though beis Shammai and beis Hillel, they disagree when it comes to tzaros. This is talking about tzaras erva, the co-wife of an erva, in terms of the halachas of Yavamas. Even though they argue about that, modim she'ein mamzer elamimi she'isuro iser erva v'anish kares. But they all agree that you don't have a mamzer unless you have a situation of a relationship which is prohibited as arayos, and the punishment is going to be kares. And so you see clearly, according to Rebbe Lozer, you have to have a situation of a punishment of kares, arayos at the level of kares, in order for the child to be a mamzer. That's not what Rabbi Akiva held. Rabbi Akiva says even chayvei lavin, it's considered to be that the child is a mamzer. And so the Gemara instead says, rather, when Ravin came, he said that Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, V'amrilon, some have the version Amar Rabbi Abba bar Zavda, Amar Rabbi Chanina, some say it's Rabbi Abba bar Zavda that said that Rabbi Chanina said, V'amrilon, some have the version Amar Rabbi Yaakov Baridi, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, that it's Rabbi Yaakov Baridi said, that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, but in any case, they said as follows, Shalosh machlukos bedover, there's actually a three-way machlukos over here. Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yishmael holds kusim gerei arayosein. The kusim are considered gerei arayos. They're not really converts. They only converted because of the lions. The kohanim shenitzmu bahem kohanim psulim hayu. And the kohanim who assimilated with them, they were actually disqualified kohanim. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, vayasulam exosim kohanei bamos. It talks about the kohanei bamos. V'yamar Rabbi bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Min hakotzim shaba'am. What it means to say is, when it says, Vayasalam miksosim, Kohanei Bamos, it means they were from like the thorns of the nation. Umishamachi paslinu, and it was for that reason that they disqualified them. Rabbi Akiva Savar, but Rabbi Akiva holds kusim gerei emesein. The kusim actually are true converts; they're considered Jewish. For kohanim shenitmu behen kohanim ksherim hayu, and the kohanim that assimilated with them were kosher kohanim. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, vayasu lohem miksosam kohanei bamos. They made from some of them the kohanim of the bamos, of the altars. V'yomer Rabbi bar Chana Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said min habechirim shabam. When it says from some of them they made kohanim, it means from the chosen ones of the nations. So if that was the case, if they were the chosen ones, why were they prohibited? Why did they disqualify them? The reason was because they would do yibam with the arusos. And Rashi explains, again, Almano Grusha, talking about the woman who's a widow or she's a divorcee, and she returns to her father's house, who's a Kohen. Veshaval Beisavia, she returns to her father's house. And we darshan, as we said, Mishayeshlo Almanus, Vegerushin Ba, Shayeshlo Kiddushin. If there's Kiddushin in that marriage, there's a concept of widowhood and being divorced. Hudeno Poslu Bebiasam Milashav. So only then is she not disqualified with the act of relations from returning. And so the Gemara then said it's clear that he doesn't hold like Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva said, Hashta Mamzer Havi Havlat, if the child's a Mamzer, Mifsal Babia Miboy, do you even need to say that this woman is disqualified with the act of relations? Velamali Haikra, you wouldn't need the pasuk. Ela Ein Havlat of Mamzer Sfirle. It must be really Rabbi Yishmael holds the child's not a Mamzer. The Alpha Gav the Lo Tafsi Le Ba Kiddushin, even though there's no Kiddushin. Vahaditanan Kol She'ein Lo Olav Kiddushin Havlat Mamzer. When it says if there's no Kiddushin, the child's a Mamzer. Dafka B'yesh Lo Velo Kiddushin Al Yedei Acherim. We said this earlier. That's only if there's at least theoretically a possibility of Kiddushin if they'd be with someone else. Dumya de Eshasav, similar to the wife of the father. Tichsiv lo yava mamzer gabei. And then the Gemara said, even though Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree when it comes to the co-wives, this was the statement of Rebbe Lozer, where Rebbe Lozer makes clear that he does not hold like Rabbi Akiva, because he holds that there's only mamzer by Isurei Kares. So Beis Shammai omrim tzaras erva misyavemes. The machlokas Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel was, Beis Shammai hold that the co-wife of an erva is able to do yibam, even though of course the erva herself is not able to do yibam because it's a situation of arayas. The co-wife is able to do the yibam. Beis Hillel osrim liyavam, and Beis Hillel say it's prohibited. Elatinasi lashuk below chalitza. Beis Hillel say she can just marry someone else. She doesn't even need chalitza. That's the parakama de Yavamas. That's in the first parak of Yavamas. So even though Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue about that, modem zelazeh she'ein mamzer, but they agree that the concept of mamzer is by kares. Uvnei ha'osim Beis Shammai mamzerim lebeis Hillel, and therefore the children of those who follow Beis Shammai are really going to be mamzerim according to Beis Hillel. Tahavelu b'nei eishes ach shelo b'makom mitzvah shibakaris, because they're essentially the son of the wife of the person's brother, and it's not a situation of yibum, so it's a situation of kares. Avol b'nei ha'osim ke Beis Hillel lebeis Shammai. Now the children of those who follow Beis Hillel in Beis Shammai's view ain't mamzerim. They're actually not mamzerim. Levishein b'nei chayve lavin, because that's just children of those who they violated a law. Because what happened according to Beis Hillel was, meaning in Beis Shammai's view, the Yavama married someone else without doing chalitza, that's just going to be a lav. In other words, Beis Hillel say that the Tzaras Erva, this co-wife of the Erva, she's not supposed to do Yivam, and she could just marry without chalitza. According to Beis Shammai, that's a violation of a lav. But in the other way around, according to Beis Hillel's view of what Beis Shammai is allowing, Beis Shammai is saying that the Tzaras Erva actually does Yibum. Now that's a problem of an Isser Kares, because if it's not really Yibum, so it's essentially the woman here is marrying the brother of her husband, that's going to be a situation of an Isser Kares. So that's why we say the children of those who follow Beis Shammai are mamzerim according to Beis Hillel. And then the Gemara said, Shalosh machlukas bedavar, there's actually a three-way machlokas. What do we mean a three machlokas? Bekusim v'kohanim hu amurim b'kra shenitzmu b'hem. The pasuk talks about kusim, and it talks about the kohanim who assimilated with them. There's a three-way machlokas, how to understand. Kedechsiv vayasu lemiktsosam kohane bamos. The pasuk says some of them became kohanim for the bamos, for the altars. B'sefer malachim gabe kusiyim, b'golus sancheirav. This is talking about when the kusiyim, when they were in the exile of Sancheirav, again, there were people that Sancheirav placed in the area of the Shomron that are known as the Kusim. Shigla Shvatim b'mei Hoshe ben Eila. The Shvatim were already exiled, and in that area of the Shomron, they placed these people, these individuals. So it talks about the fact that some of them became Kohane Bamas, and the question is, what does that mean? And again, you have the opinion that says Min HaKotzim. It says, what does it mean? Miktsosam Kohane Bamas. So according to what Rabbi Bar Rachana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, it means the Kotzim Sheba'am. Lashon Kotz Shupsol, like the thorns, the ones who are no good. Lashon Achrina Muksin Hein Mina'am Lifsuler. They're muksa, they're set aside and they're disqualified. That was one opinion. And the other opinion, Rabbi Bar Rachana said from Rabbi Yochanan, explaining the shita of Rabbi Akiva, that it actually means min habechirim sheba'am, from the chosen ones of the nations. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph.